defendant recused herself, and the case was randomly assigned to another judge, Judge Palos. So that's a summary of what this indictment is about. So at this time, I'd ask the defendant if she had anything she wanted to say to the court. I would note that she did provide a written statement as part of the pre-sentence investigation, which I've read. Counsel?
Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, just as a matter of housekeeping, as it relates to the pre-sentence investigation,
Sure.
the statement that was attributed to Ms. Calabrese, actually there were some errors that were within that. And so what I did bring today, it didn't really change the substance of it, but there were some errors in there that I wanted to clear up. On February 23rd, 2026, we had submitted that statement from Ms. Calabrese to the probation officer. I do have that marked here as Defense Exhibit A, and if it was needed to approve, I'd ask to hand it to you there.
Sure.
Thank you. I have provided a copy of that to the prosecutor already. The court has to speak from here or the podium.
Whichever you prefer.
Thank you, Art, for giving us this opportunity. We do stand here today with a felony of the third degree, with no request from either party for incarceration sentence, but an agreement for resignation from office, and obviously this felony plea. As I start off today, I do have a rather extended statement to make to you, because you'll understand why as I go through all of the facets of Ms. Calabrese' life. I think it's important for you to consider. And so I'd like to characterize this and therefore title my presentation A Step from the Path, and this name will be better understood at the conclusion of my remarks. We're here to speak today about former Judge Leslie Ann Calabrese, and not as a distant name on a docket, but as someone whose life and service are rooted in her upbringing, her values, and lived experience. She was drawn to service long before she ever wore a robe. She grew up in a family dedicated to public life, and a family that did believe in fairness, responsibility, and commitment to service. Her father served on the same court as she did. Her grandfather also served on the bench. And those examples shaped her sense of purpose and her understanding of what it meant to serve. Now, before Judge Calabrese, or former Judge Calabrese, entered law, she entered one of the most noble callings that there is, and that was that of a registered nurse. She does remain one to this day, and that work taught her steadiness, responsibility, and compassion. It taught her how to stand with people during some of the most difficult moments of their lives, and that grounding never left her, and in fact gave her the lens within which she looked at the law when she entered into it. She did answer what she believed to be her calling into the legal profession, first as a staff attorney, then as a magistrate, and then through the trust of the voters for more than a decade and a half as a judge on the domestic relations bench. So in that courtroom, families and futures, as you know, as many come before you, were at stake. They were not abstract disputes. They were real people, real lives with real consequences. And through it all, she did work tirelessly with dignity, discipline, empathy, and care. Hence, my name was Step Off the Path, because all of that leads up to the date of this instance that brings us here today. People who came before her, and I think one of the things to notice early on is That side of the courtroom is bare, usually where we have supporters that come. And even the most heinous offenders who come before the court, we find that there are supporters. But the decision, it was a conscious decision by Leslie Celebrezzi not to have people here today. She got herself into this. Many things, she's thought about this and did not want to trouble anyone or bring them in here. As far as sentencing memorandums, we usually have them full of letters, glowing letters. But she's going to stand on her responsibility and her path getting her here for you to decide here today, and did not want to put this on anyone else. So over the last several months that we've been here, I have received many calls, though, and the theme that I have gotten is that when she was a judge, when she was a magistrate, when she was involved in the law, she respected the process and respected the people involved. You came to her when everything was in turmoil, they were hurting, they needed a resolution, and in her courtroom at the time, she really did make a conscious effort to get families involved. She made the children very involved in the process, even when emotions ran high and pain was real and the stakes could not have been higher. She carried that responsibility seriously every single day, and that was because on top of serving as a judge, she raised 3 children with her husband, who was a respected position in town. Leslie Celebrezzi does understand the pressure and responsibility and the reality that families live with. She knows what it means to worry, to fight for stability, and to carry the weight of decisions that affect the people you love most. Throughout her years of service, she showed up and she listened. She brought fairness, compassion, and judgment to others. She never forgot that behind every file and every hearing there were children, parents, and families who had to keep living with the outcome. I explained to you a moment ago why there's no one here today, but I would like to talk about this being a model for how to accept responsibility. When the allegations surfaced, and I had the opportunity to speak with Assistant County Prosecutor Mussman, and I appreciate his candor in going through all the aspects of this case. He gave me a fair opportunity to speak with Ms. Celebrezzi, and as evidenced by the information in this case that she entered into, she put up no fight. She opted not to see how the system worked, knowing fully well the people who are guilty of offenses still, more times than not, opt to go to trial, have their cases pre-tried, see who shows up as witnesses, see how they can get their case brought down to misdemeanors and so forth. We looked at the history of other judges who have been brought before a bench for various offenses, and I could have made arguments very easily as to a different treatment. That's not what she wanted in this case. She said, I did.
Now things get interesting. The defense is arguing that 4 months of self-imposed house arrest should count as meaningful punishment. But should voluntary restrictions carry the same weight as court-ordered incarceration? That's a tough question, and one the judge will have to wrestle with before announcing a sentence.
And I'll stand there, and that's the end of this. And that's how she's been. I have gone through the history of all of the judges in this region, Northeast Ohio, but for the judges that were caught up in the public corruption cases in the Northern District by the federal courts. And I would say that if you were to look at all of those cases from 2009 up until 2021, I would describe, I don't want to get into kind of shades of conduct, which is better, which is worse, but I will say the difference in the way that they handled it was very clear. They fought the cases, they contested the cases, they drew out the cases, they fought the disciplinary processes, they fought every aspect of the way. And when sanctions were imposed in those cases in which they were, those cost the taxpayers money. That also was something that Leslie Celebrezzi did not think was fair at all. And what she did, and also if I may approach her bailiff with Exhibit B, was a resignation of her judgeship right away without any contest at all. If I may just provide a copy. Ma'am? Exhibit B is a letter from Chief Justice Sharon Kennedy acknowledging the submission of the resignation letter that was given to Judge Diane Palos right away. Again, just goes to show that this is someone, when we talk about what does taking responsibility mean, the behavior here is so clear. Oftentimes we stand and we say, our client, and the client does in fact get up there and accept responsibility, and they say, Your Honor, I'm sorry for what I did, and I'm here and I took a plea, and all those things. But the actions that have even led up to the time of the plea, and that which I'm still going to continue to talk about, really show that she has set a model in how to really define what responsibility and taking responsibility is in a criminal case. Now, stories and claims have swirled for years as to what occurred here. And as with most stories that spread like kind of the childhood game of telephone, the vast majority of it was nothing more than fodder for gossip, frankly. Former Judge Celebrezzi stands here today to separate the truth from fiction. Yes, she was responsible for it. She did, in fact, improperly have a journal entry executed. It indicated that the case was randomly assigned, while it was held by, at that time, the judge herself. She recognizes the impropriety of her actions and voluntarily stands here today to admit the offense, which will alter the course of her life in a manner that she and her countless supporters that wanted to be here today could have and would have never imagined. She makes no excuse and she minimizes nothing. Now, the swift resolution in this case is widely known with her character. Her background, again, as I said, it began in 2000 as a staff attorney. And while in law school, she went to night school and she worked at a doctor's office. Again, as I said, she was registered as a registered nurse. She had 3 children, all of them while she was serving in the municipal court. In addition to just taking to the bench, she also volunteered her time for what she cared about. She taught religion in kindergarten and first grade. She's worked at and continues to work at the animal shelter, and specifically was the primary animal shelter for 3 years. All 3 of her kids have done very well under the care of she and her husband. 2 are in medical school, 1 is in undergraduate and business school. Now, this case has spanned really 3 years since this has kind of been talked about and stories started to come out about it. When we looked, and I asked Leslie, how many cases do you think you handled? She believed that she had handled in excess of 20,000 cases. Approximately 400 a month is what a judge was carrying over at that time, somewhere between a 300 to 500 case spread. She employed 2 magistrates, 2 staff members, a bailiff, and a judicial assistant. And all of that took a heavy toll on her as well when she had to tell them she was no longer coming back, and it was abrupt. I asked her, because as I said, she should not be defined by one moment, unfortunately. I asked that she not be defined by this one course of action in her life, but by a long history of good deeds throughout her life. I asked her what she was most proud of. She had said her children, 3 children, helping her husband in his career, and then also one of the things that she did as a judge that has carried on and will carry on despite what she's done here, will carry on to help countless people. And that was developing and putting into play what was called a PAVE program, P-A-V-E. And that was Parenting After Violence Education. It began as a pilot program that spanned 18 months. And it would be described as a batterer's intervention and parenting class combined. It helped abusers with trauma, it protected spouses, and it assisted children in the end. It helped fathers reunite with their children. And while it only started with her as the presiding judge, it became a court program. And so regardless of what happens here, regardless of how she's viewed after all of this is done, she has left a legacy of good that's going to help many people that enter into that courthouse. She did receive the disciplinary notice from the court. She was suspended for 2 years. She was stayed for a year. She is under suspension now. But her intention is to look into nursing and to get back to what her original love and path was, which is still just helping people. So I've reviewed, as have you certainly, the sentencing factors pursuant to revised code section 292911. And obviously the overriding purpose is of felony sentencing to protect the public and to punish the offender, promote effective rehabilitation without imposing an unnecessary burden on state or local government resources, not demeaning the seriousness of the offense. I would say, Your Honor, that the term of supervision is more than adequate in this case. I don't come to you today saying she can comply with the term of supervision. I come to you today to say that she has complied with the term of supervision. I'm going to explain that now for you. Of course, after a plea is done, we wait for sentencing typically. And there are instances where someone may be incarcerated, this not being the case. But we looked at the factors, and those to determine whether or not the conduct was more or less serious than the conduct normally constituting the offense, and the conduct to determine, or her history to determine whether or not it was more or less likely that she's going to repeat this or any other criminal offense in the future. And the one thing that certainly we have to acknowledge is that when we look at subsection B, the fact that she held public office is there, is present, and it's something that we took seriously, and it was something that we felt warranted more than coming here and saying we're sorry, and therefore give us a chance. And so from the date of the plea, which we began was February 3rd, but on February 4th, we began, I guess you would say, a self-imposed electronic monitored house arrest program. I've got all the documentation here. I've asked Mr. Bob Patterson to be present today also to testify and answer any questions that you have, should you have any. But for the last near 4 months, it'll be 4 months and 2 days, Leslie Ann Celebrezzi has been confined to her home. She has not left her home. She has been in the home 24 hours a day, but for very limited and approved notified instances. One was one child's white coat ceremony.
This is a critical legal point. Defense counsel is emphasizing that the defendant immediately accepted responsibility, rather than forcing prosecutors through a lengthy trial. In sentencing, judges often consider cooperation and acceptance of responsibility as mitigating factors, but they don't erase the offense itself.
In medical school, 2 was to put a dog down, and then 3, there were necessities of life, grocery receipts, for which I have every single receipt that she has. Other than that, she did not leave the house in 4 months. And there had to be a penalty, and 4 months of house arrest is nothing to sneeze at. But she did it, and I would submit then that we look at that as mitigation under subsection C of less serious conduct normally constituting the offense. I don't think that Judge Celebrezzi is likely to commit any future crimes. She's no longer a judge, so that doesn't even exist. And I will say that the Ohio Supreme Court has given great weight just to that factor alone. In a case that was of alleged fraud and proven fraud eventually of a judge in Lorain County, the Supreme Court, in rendering its discipline in that case, really looked to the fact that that person was no longer going to be a judge, and in imposing the disciplinary sanction gave greater weight to that as one of its factors. So, as I've said, Leslie Celebrezzi has devoted her life to public service. She's mentored others. She's contributed to the legal community. She's worked to strengthen both the justice system and the people within it. She gave years of energy, commitment, and care to the people of Cuyahoga County. She did, and this is really unfortunate that the harm that this is doing to her reputation and her legacy, and to that of not just her, but those that she cares about, her family, and so forth. I mean, never in a million years would she have expected, nor any of us who knew her expected her to have to walk out. You know, I can say keep your head up high and walk out with your head up high and only you know you and all these things. It's very difficult to do, walking past a panel of cameras, to walk out knowing that that's the last anyone's going to see of you in a state of shame, having had their fate decided by you, Your Honor. So I hope that she is not defined by this one moment, but by consistent effort, substance over noise, conscience over convenience. And I talked about a step from the path, and the reason that I said that is at her age, as is set forth in the pre-sentence investigation, with the conduct that's here. We talk about, and I'm not here to minimize anything at all, but we do have to look at what the conduct was. The 4 months of the house arrest would have been no different whether she did it the way she did it or in the way that you would have done it. It was the same exact program. And that's more than sufficient to punish her, to rehabilitate her, to deter, and to make a point. And stepping away from the bench does not mean stepping away from service. She'll continue to support her community. She'll continue to help, to contribute, and to serve even off the bench. And Leslie Celebrezzi will continue that work, not because of title, but because that part of service truly is who she is. I've gone over this entire statement many, many times with Leslie Celebrezzi. She's approved all of it. She's adopted everything I've said. She accepts the responsibility. She is remorseful. She's mindful of the impact her actions have had upon others. She's already paid an enormous price for this act. And we are prepared to accept what you now deem, or do deem, as appropriate and pursuant to law. And know that she has prepared another statement for you. If the court has any questions for me, including why, I am very comfortable saying that when we compare this, because her sentence has to be consistent with other sentences imposed, of course, by similar offenders, similar offenses. And again, in looking through all of the offenses, what she has done and imposed herself. And I want to be clear, very crystal clear as to why she imposed it herself. And that is because every single time someone gets sentenced by you or any other judge on the bench, it's the taxpayer who has to bear the cost of doing that. In this case, she did not put a single penny on anybody. She's willing to pay the cost of the investigation, and the cost of this she had to pay. It was $2,000 up front. It was $10,000 a month that she had to do. And that is far beyond any sentence that any judge has done for conduct that I would submit. Not she, because she's not here to downplay anything, but that I have the responsibility to describe as conduct that would be similar and worse, but again, most importantly, in situations, all of them, where the judges required that the system expend greater resource on them. She is the only person that has not done that. I want to thank you, Your Honor, for all the time that you've given this case.
I stand here today in complete agreement with the statement.
My legal counsel just shared. We stand here today because of my actions only. I apologize, Your Honor. My actions have consequences, and I accept that. The last several months have been confined to my house. It caused me to truly reflect on my conduct and my life in general. I am so genuinely sorry for what I've done, and whatever Your Honor deems appropriate. Please know again, I'm deeply sorry. And I am committed to getting back on my life path and helping others. Thank you.
Does the court have any questions of the counsel or the Sellers?
No, I don't believe so.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mussman?
Thank you, Your Honor. Gregory Mussman on behalf of the state of Ohio. Your Honor, first I'd like to thank the investigation that was conducted by the Cleveland office of the FBI. The FBI did a thorough investigation with respect to this matter. They presented their findings to me. Based on that investigation, I have reached out to counsel for Ms. Celebrezze. I will say counsel for Ms. Celebrezze immediately indicated that she was going to take responsibility for that matter. And that's why we do have an information instead of an indictment. That being said, Your Honor, the allegation was that Ms. Celebrezze did in fact steer a case to herself under the deception of a false journal entry. So, Your Honor, that being said, there were two conditions with respect to our negotiations. Ms. Celebrezze had to resign from office immediately, which she did, and she had to plead to a felony. There were no negotiations for a misdemeanor plea. It was a felony only. Ms. Celebrezze took responsibility and did enter a plea to a felony. So with that being said, Your Honor, the state of Ohio would defer to this court with respect to sentencing.
As counsel stated in reciting the overriding purposes of sentencing, protect the public, punish the offender, and promote effective rehabilitation of the defendant while using minimum sanctions that the court determines accomplish those purposes without imposing any unnecessary burden on the government. And then the court has to look at the seriousness factors and the recidivism factors, which I think your counsel appropriately summarized with, I mean, given the resignation, you're not going to be in a position to commit this offense again, so that's pretty easy. There's also the factor of, are you genuinely remorseful or not, but that goes to recidivism, so it's almost irrelevant. I mean, I never know if a person's genuinely remorseful. How can I figure that out? It appears you are from reading your statement and from listening to you today. But as I said, you're not going to commit this offense again. So the court has focused on the seriousness factors. I'm not sure I agree with your counsel that 4 months of home confinement makes this less serious, but I have taken that into account. What makes it more serious is, as he mentioned, that you held a public office, and also because of your particular position, that helped facilitate what you actually did to commit this crime. As I told counsel, I don't know if it was on the record or not, but I wanted a pre-sentence investigation because I wanted that information, and it would help me determine whether or not to impose any local jail time, which I wanted to keep as a possibility. Prison time I was not interested in, although, I mean, I think you could make an argument for it given what you did, but and I appreciate the fact that you haven't drawn this out. You've admitted what you did. You haven't wasted people's time. And I've taken that into account also. But as to the seriousness, I think about as a judge who was on the bench for 43 years, plus 3.5 years in retirement. It concerns me that the harm to the judiciary that something like this causes when government officials, judges, mayors, elected officials are not held in high esteem by the public right now. And something like this, when it is reported to the public, just lowers that esteem. And it also, I also think about the hundreds of other judges in this state who, go through their day doing the right thing, following the rules of superintendents. The harm that it might do to them when the people in their county think, oh, all these judges are crooked, corrupt. So what I've determined is that there should be some incarceration, given the nature of the offense and the fact that you held public office. So the court is first of all going to impose a fine of $10,000 plus the court costs and 60 days in the county jail. That will be the order of the court.